This is the best football show. I'm Brian Baldinger, and that other guy is Mark Schlereth, otherwise known as Stink. And we come from the trenches, and we want to talk about the trenches right here on the best football show. You can find this, wherever you get your podcast at. Download it for free, like it, subscribe to it. Hope you like this one, because Mark and myself are kind of in agreement here on the shift that we're seeing in real time about this NFL and the lean and the direction that the good teams are going to, which is a strong rushing attack, Mark. I don't know where you were last week. I'm sure. Where were you last week? What game were you doing?
Last week I actually didn't have a game last week, but I've been all over the National Football League, from Detroit to Arizona, you name it, everywhere in between. And yeah, I'm with you on the whole running game, man. The resurgence of the running game. I had this conversation with Pete Carroll last year. I was calling a game. I think it was in San Francisco, Seattle and San Francisco. And Pete was just like, hey, man, listen, you're going to love where the league is going. It's going back to the dinosaur days of the 90s. Like, you are going to love what's happening right now. Teams that can run the ball, teams that can operate from that, from that core of the running game and create that hard play action, run action. Like, I separate play action into two categories.
Right.
The play pass, which is, you flag the ball out. It's a 7-man protection. You're throwing a deep, either you're running a post or an over or whatever. And then hard run action, where you're booting out the backside. You're half rolling out the backside, right? Like, there's two separate types. And the teams that can really run it, get under center, really run it, run that hard play action stuff, man, the effect that has on a defense is immeasurable. And that's where the league really is kind of like, the good teams are all doing that right now. And it warms my heart, because it's the era where you and I played, and it's coming back. It's making full circle comeback.
The other thing it does, Mark, when you're team building, it builds toughness in your team.
Sure.
Like how you practice, how you prepare. Like there's a core of toughness within the team that shows up. And the other part is, like, I'm here in Philly, Mark. And so, I'm watching this team turn things around. They were 2-2. They weren't going anywhere. They were turning the ball over early in the year. They got blown out in Tampa. They had the bye week. They came back and said, screw that. They're throwing it 21 times a game, Mark. Saquon's going to win the rushing title. They're running the football. They're leaning on a very talented, very good offense line. Not just, they moved the line of scrimmage. It's not this, this zone stretch stuff that this is power football. Detroit's doing the same thing right now. And you were just in Detroit. Like, that line with Sewell and Zeitler and Ragnow and, Glasgow, like that's an elite group. They move the line of scrimmage. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And that group is diverse. Like, they will run a lot of wide zone and tight zone stuff. They'll run, your gap schemes with your powers and your counters, and they'll run, your inside trap stuff. They do a lot of wham stuff with their tight ends. So they'll do a myriad of different things, but they're good at all of those things. And the thing that I love about watching them, they decide kind of like everybody, like the really good run teams, or the really good teams, in my opinion, have a base of what they want to live in, right? We're going to live in this. Like, I always joke around with people. When I was in Denver and we won back-to-back world championships, we ran 6 plays.
Yep.
We ran 18-19 handoff, the 18-19 force, all the 18-19 wide zone, whether it was pitch or toss, whatever. So we ran that. We ran 14-15, which was the tight mid-zone factor, right? That same thing. And then, that's essentially, that's where we lived. That's all we really did. Now we put window dressing on it. We motioned. We got in different formations. We got in two tight solo.
Or when you stripped it all down, Mark. When you stripped it all down, you had 6 plays.
Yeah, that's all we ran. But we just ran them better than everybody else. And the thing I love about that aspect of football is that, it's the 10,000-hour rule, Baldy. Like, I always think about it like I think about one of my favorite movies, all-time favorite movies, because it's just so stupid, was Dodgeball. We're better than you, and we know it.
Right.
Like, I've run wide zone 10,000 times.
Yeah.
You've defended it 200 times.
Right.
I'm better at you than it, and I know it, and I'm going to run it down your throat. And so the good.
Well, you also had Alex Gibbs
Yeah, we had Alex Gibbs. We did some things that maybe are a little bit questionable in today's football. Yeah, you know what? But I think the big thing with Detroit is whatever they focus on, whatever they decide they're going to be that week, that's what they are.
Yeah.
And they're really good at it. The other thing that Detroit does better than any team in football is they have a coach that knows they're going to go for it on fourth down probably more often than they should.
So they attempted 5 on last week, Mark.
Right, and 4 of them. They converted on 4 of them. But it takes some of the pressure off. There's less butthole pucker in Detroit on third down because they know they're going for it on fourth down. So you look at the amount of favorable looks they get in third down and 5+.
Right.
And how many times they'll actually run inside trap on 3rd and 5+, unheard of stuff that teams just are unwilling to do. Why? Well, we know we're going for it on fourth down. And I do I have so much respect for Dan Campbell because he's that dude is dumb like a fox. He plays the role of meathead really well, but he's a really smart dude.
Yeah, yeah.
And he is so good at just saying, hey, man, this is who we are. And one of the things I wanted with my football team is I wanted them to know the aggressive style with which we're going to play. They know what's coming. They have that confidence in what's coming, and their coach ain't going to waver.
Well, at the end of the game against Green Bay, Mark, they go for it on 4th and 3. They want to finish the game with the ball. Remember, that was a big practice point. 4-minute drill, all that stuff. We're going to finish the game with the ball. We're not going to leave it to chance, to special teams, to Jordan Love, to another team. We're going to finish the game with the ball. And that's exactly how he was thinking on that play. Exactly.
And they've done it so much that I just remember, and you probably remember it too, man, coming off the goal line, 3rd down and long, or going for a conversion on 4th down, a 4th down and 2 or 3, got to have it situations, man. We didn't do it very often. Yeah, it wasn't part of the game plan. So there's a pucker factor that is involved in oh shit. I remember the scary, the most fear I ever had as a player is 3rd down and long from your own 2-yard line.
Yeah, I know.
Because you're oh shit, we gotta and I'm lined up over Warren Sapp and he's breathing fire and you're if I get a holding call, that's 2 points. Safety. We lose the game. Yeah, so you're thinking that way, but these guys don't flinch. They're just so used to it. They practice it. They do it all the time in games. It's just he's got exponentially more 4th down attempts and 3rd down and long attempts, where they're running and stuff than any other team in football.
Well, the other thing, Mark, is a couple weeks ago, Baltimore went out to the Chargers. And on paper, we all read all the stats every week, right, Mark? So we all got all the, they're the number 1 defense football. They hadn't seen a run team like Baltimore. They ran for 211 yards. They just gutted them. And, that's what you go up to Minnesota now. They lead the league in takeaways and interceptions, all that stuff. The last 2 weeks I've seen teams, Arizona and even Atlanta last week, they ran the ball really good against Minnesota. And it makes me think okay, Flores is a good coordinator. Sam's having a great year, all that stuff. You get in a big game against Detroit at the end of the year, and they want to run the ball at you. All that stuff, all those zone pressures, all that blitzing, all that stuff that leads to turnovers, that can all go away real fast with teams that can just pound you like that.
100%. There were a couple of teams during my career, when we were running in Denver, we had won, 13 games in 96. We won 12 games in 97 and 14 games in 98. So we had this run where it was the greatest 3-year run. I think it was tied for the greatest 3-year run as far as victories are concerned of any team in NFL history. And we used to get a couple of teams, like the Raiders used to run blitz us all the time. They used to think that was going to solve their issues.
Yeah.
And I would just laugh about it because I'd be like, all right, listen, man, you may get us. And it would go like this, Baldy. It would go 2 yards, 3 yards, 1 yard, 2 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, 2 yards, 57-yard breakout. Whoa, and because when you're bringing pressure, what ends up happening is you're coming full tilt, right? You're bringing pressure, and if I can just get, it just has to be like this, Baldy. That's all the harder it has to be. And now you're not not 8 inches out of your gap assignment. You're 3 feet out of your gap assignment. And now that back cuts off that block. And guess what? Everybody and their brother's uncle's on the line of scrimmage. And now it's just a foot race between you and the far side corner. Who can get to the edge first? So like that stuff, and you're 100% right as far as Flores is concerned. It's awesome. But, we had the philosophy, I'm going to beg you to blitz us. Please blitz us because we're good at picking it up, and please blitz us in the running game because we're going to crease your ass. And that's 100%. You're 100% right about Detroit would look at Minnesota and go, please bring as much pressure as you can possibly bring.
Put 7 up at the line of scrimmage, okay?
Yeah.
And start dropping when we come counter-trade. In fact, it's interesting, Mark. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it yet, but I was watching the Seattle-Arizona game yesterday, and Zach Charbonnet had a big game, right?
Yeah.
Well, the play of the game is it's a 17 game. It's 17-10 game. It's a dogfight. And Arizona on like 3rd and 5 gives them like the classic, we're going to play pass look. And they're going to blitz Budda Baker on the backside. And they run counter Trey away from it. No safety in the middle field. Charbonnet hit him for 51. Broke the game wide open. And you're just like, that's Mike McDonald's he's getting pretty good up there in Seattle. They're turning things around pretty quick. Defense is playing good. Big Cat Williams is playing the best football he's ever played. But, it's interesting, like, they caught him in a blitz, and they scorched him on that one play. And that broke him. That changed the whole game there.
It changes the tenor of the game. And I will tell you, and you know this, man, like, you give up a 60-yard, touchdown throw, and as a defense, you're like, they got us. You know what? We busted a coverage. Or, hey, the guy is a wide receiver. He's a really good one. Is a perfect pass. There's no defense for the perfect pass. Everybody goes to the sideline. They try to adjust and figure it out. Man, you want to talk about guys being humiliated. You want to talk about guys fighting within the context of their defense. You start hitting people for 8 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 8 yards, 16 yards.
Bitching and moaning on that defensive side of the ball makes you laugh.
Come on, you guys. And you're just like
pointing fingers.
Yeah, you're laughing it up like you guys don't have an answer for this. And there's a beauty to me. There's just an absolute beauty in being able to do that. And to get right back to where we started the conversation, man, it's becoming more and more prominent. And one of the reasons it's becoming prominent, Baldy, is because defenses are so small. And the defenses in today's game have gotten so small and so athletic that if you can get yourself into a downhill scheme, like, hey, man, like we always used to talk about guys like when I play against Junior Seau, man, I didn't want to run away from Junior Seau because that dude would slip you and jump over the top of you and, chase you down in the backfield. I want to run right at you, make you stop your feet, right? Take away your athleticism. And now those guys are stopping their feet. They're 214 pounds. I am going to absolutely skull drag you through the box, man. I'm just going to absolutely hammer your ass.
Well, Mark, that's what the Packers did to the Cowboys in that playoff game last year. They ran right at Micah Parsons. They ran at those dime linebackers inside right there. Like they couldn't hold up. Aaron Jones was like, he had his choice of what holes to run through. And so, like, everybody had a long face in Dallas. I'm like, every team that can run the ball did this to him.
Right.
Like, Arizona did it to him last year.
Yeah.
And so, you're looking at the teams that are a little bit better. Like, I'm kind of interested, Mark, because I feel like Sean Payton's doing a great job in your woods right there.
Yeah.
And, you go back, it was a shootout in Cleveland the last time they played, but I thought I'm seeing a real commitment to the run game. They're trying to figure out, is it Jaleel? Is it Javonte? Like, who's going to get it? But, up front, I feel like those guys, minors especially, I feel like they're getting after it much better now than they did early in the year. And I think the quarterback is benefiting from all of it.
Yeah, there's no question. I think one of the things they did, Baldy, is they stopped with so much fly motion and so much regular motion early.
Yeah. Okay.
And, anytime you motion guys from one side to the other, you change the strength of the defense. The defense moves accordingly. And they were just screwing up number counts.
Yeah.
So they weren't blocking the second level very well. And I watched so many different just busts, assignment busts. Like dude, come on now. I used to have this rule with kids, young kids, because, kids are trying to always memorize like the middle linebacker's number. It's 58, it's 58, it's 58, it's 58. If 58's not in, it's 54, it's 54. And I'm like, stop it.
Yeah.
Like, stop it. I used to tell this all kids all the time. You'll love this, Baldy. I go, can you count to 2? And they'd be like, yeah. And I go, do it. Count to 2. And they'd be like, up yours. I go, no, count to 2. 1, 2. Great. Okay. The first guy, if he's strong, it's the Sam. The second guy is the Mike. If you're on the weak side, the first guy is the Will. The second guy is the Mike. I don't care if it's a nickel. I don't care who it is, right? And so number 2 becomes the Mike. And if you're identifying things as the Mike and where we're going to go and run the football, and then if we're running, a single back nickel, right, then we got to click one over and say, okay, we got to get number 1 now, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
It drives me nuts when they're not blocking the most dangerous men.
Yeah.
And they're turning guys loose. I see the Jets do it all the time. Like, I don't know who's calling signal.
I've got the Jets this weekend, and the Jets are a really talented football team that is either they're not prepared or they're just dumb or they just don't study. But I see the same stuff where I'm like looking at it going, come on, like this is not rocket science. Like it's
Mark, like the other
stuff.
day, like they get a quarter cap blitz. Jalen Ramsey's coming off the corner. Like it's a rookie out there in Olu Fashanu. Like he's a rookie. I get it. But like if he's coming, Calais Campbell is coming inside. Like he's coming inside. Like, I mean, just keep your eyes up. Like, okay, you just take your inside step. You're probably going to run right by Ramsey.
Right.
You don't want to talk. So I don't know. Like nobody breaks down more, and they're just a poorly built team. They don't have a big fat guy in the middle that can just free up their line. They're just poorly built. And so they can't finish games.
Yeah, it definitely drives you crazy. But getting back to the Denver conversation, they quit some of the motion, so they've stationary. They've made the backers and the secondary level guys stationary. The other thing that it drives me a little bit crazy sometimes watching film, Baldy, is that so many teams are so anxious to get to the second level.
Yeah. Well, you got to take care of the down man first, Mark.
Right. I'm
work up to the second level.
Right. And here was always my thought process on the second level. Eventually, the second level's got to trigger and come get you.
Yep.
Eventually, they have got to, as a linebacker,
they want to take you off the double team.
Right. They can't stand there and go, okay, I'm just going to stand here at 5 yards depth or whatever, 4.5 yards depth, and let it come to me because guess what? Now I just got a 6-yard run. So eventually, the guy's got to fire his gun. He's got to trigger. And so to me, I'm like, I'm going to stay as long as I could possibly stay until this guy makes his decision. Are you coming down hard on me? Are you scraping over the top? What is it? And then I never get caught up. Let the back do the back. The back has got a job to do. Mm-hmm. That's to set up my block and make people miss. Yep. That's your job as a back. And there's some backs that are extremely good at it because they understand. This is where, I'll tell you where Terrell Davis made his living in the Hall of Fame. He made up for a multitude of sins. But Terrell Davis knew our scheme better than our coaches knew our scheme.
Yep.
So he knew, like, hey, man, if I get this wide 9, man, I ain't stretching that to the outside.
Right.
I'm going to stretch the defense as far, but I know at some point I'm hitting my foot and I'm cutting back. So I'm going to get them to stretch as much as I can to set up my guard so I can push, and then climb and cut the guy off as opposed, and cut him off on the front side because I know I'm going to get a cutback behind.
Well, that requires patience. Patience
requires patience and intelligence and understanding what understanding what the weakness of the defense is, what the strength of the defense is, and then adjusting accordingly as a player.
Yeah, I agree. I think Aaron Jones is that guy. Like I've always been, that guy doesn't miss holes, and his vision is, and he never ends up running in the back of his offensive lineman. Never. Like some guys just run blind.
I love watching the Detroit backs set guys up. I love watching Saquon. Obviously Derrick Henry is a freaking beast, and what they do in Baltimore, and anytime you have a Ricard in your backfield, a former defensive lineman that's 315 and can run. Like I love watching that. Dude's one of my favorite players to watch. He just tries to punish people.
He does more without the ball than anybody else in this league.
Right.
I love just breaking him down without the ball, all the things that he can do.
Yeah.
Well, look, Mark, I think this is enough. I don't want to blow our fan base up here with too much, trench talk here, but we got to do this again because these games are only going to get bigger. You know, the good thing about this time of the year, Mark, is it really separates the pretenders from the contenders.
Yeah.
Like it's already separated a bunch. We got a lot of bad football in this league right now. You know, that's going to involve a lot of coaching changes and personnel changes. But the good teams, though, have figured out their identity, and they're mastering it right now.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I will say this, Baldy. There's certain things that don't lie. Okay, it's small children don't lie. Okay,
I like that.
Physicality in the run game doesn't lie.
Yeah,
and yoga pants. Those three things do not lie, Baldy. And I'm going to tell you right now. You know, everybody gets all giddy about wide receivers and catching the ball and all that stuff. You want to win come January, you best control the line of scrimmage. You better be able to do that on both sides of the ball. If you can't, guess what? You get sent home and you're watching it right for them where we're watching it, on the couch, you on the sideline, me on the couch or in the booth. But, hey, man, I appreciate you. You can always check me out on my Stinking Truth podcast as well, right here on YouTube and Odyssey as well. So check that out. Always appreciate hanging with you, Baldy.
Yep. We'll do it again, Mark. Good being with you.
Sounds good, buddy.
Yep. Thanks. Good.
Yeah.